Buffs Nation, you know that the only constant within college football is the fact that it never stays the same for very long. It's always in flux, it's always evolving, it's always changing. That's going to be the same as we go in here to the future. Welcome to my channel. I'm David. I talk Coach Prime Deion Sanders, the CU Buffs football program, and really all from the perspective of a local CU alum here in Colorado. Thank you for checking out my channel. And today, on Sunday afternoon, wanting to do a little coffee conversation, so to speak, a little monologue around the future of college football pertaining to the student athletes themselves and the possibility that we might see a players' union finally come together for college football. Of course, we have the players' unions that are part of professional sports leagues. We haven't seen that yet on a wide scale within collegiate athletics, but I think now is the time where there might be a stronger possibility coming up with this becoming a reality. I know when I was younger, in probably the mid to late 2000s or so, you had Northwestern, some of their student athletes, football players organizing to attempt to create a union, arguing that they are employees of the university. That eventually didn't happen. And then we've seen even now, since post-COVID, we've seen some players' unions start to rise up, but again, they don't have a lot of membership. And really, for a union to be effective, you know that you need the vast majority of the workers to be a part of that union in order to, be at the collective bargaining, to be at the table, to be negotiating and fighting for the interests of the employees, or in this case, the student athletes or football players. Now, I do think that it's possible that with a players' union starting in college football, that you would then see that bring in basketball and the other collegiate sports. But I think most of us can agree on that if this thing is going to start, it's going to and gain momentum of widespread adoption. It's going to have to happen first with the football players. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, of course, with NIL, there's some more gray area that's kind of being there with compensation with football players. Again, you're not seeing universities use that TV revenue money or that ticket revenue money to pay players outright, but you have boosters that are allowed to sign players to NIL, collectives or these endorsement deals that they're associated with the university, but they're not being paid by the university. And so that allows these student athletes and the universities to kind of keep that legality line straight, so to speak, where these aren't paid employees. They can go get their money somewhere else. They're student athletes first. But I think that really post-COVID, you saw this issue a couple seasons ago when you had the shortened seasons where certain universities were requiring students to come back to practice, to play football games, even if campus wasn't fully open, signing liability waivers saying that the university wouldn't be liable for any issues that were happening to their health if they were to contract the COVID-19 virus. That's a big deal. That's something that other unions in professional sports would be fighting hard on. Now, you saw it with the NBA and the players union in the NBA, how they agreed on the testing, on the bubble, on how to do all the playoff stuff. You've seen kind of the mess that the NFL players union is, which I think is the weakest union in American professional sports. They've had all sorts of issues the last few years in terms of vaccination and testing and not being vaxxed and all these different rules and all that. But let's circle back to college football. I think with the money becoming so big, there's still a greater risk that there won't be protection of the student athlete. Now, of course, the NCAA has kind of been the safeguard in some sense to student athletes, while also kind of, being their evil villain, preventing them from making money. But, they institute things like, restrictions on how many hours of meetings and practice you can have a week and all of that. But with NIL kind of rising up and the TV money getting so big for these athletic conferences, I feel like you've kind of seen the NCAA's power and ability to kind of dictate things has gone down over the last few years. And so one of the fears that I have is that, much like the NFL, where they realize, hey, if we extend another week, if we have more playoff games, all this, we're going to make more money, and so we're going to do that. And, the players agree to it. The one thing that I do like about, there are a handful of things that I like about college football, but one of the main things that I like about college football is that I don't right now feel the season is too long. And one of my fears is that here in the future, you're going to see these conferences in college football kind of extend to really become more of a professional type schedule where you're playing 15 plus games. And this is a special time for student athletes, for college football players, where 95, 99% of these players will not be going pro. It's going to be important that they do get their degree and they get everything out of their education that they can while they're here in school. One of the fears that I have is that things like winter break or the semester break, they're not going to be getting those luxuries. They're always going to be playing football games, and there's going to be more and more pressure with more and more games and money on the line for them to prioritize this over their classes, pursuing their degree. And of course, that's always been an issue. It's why you saw Northwestern argue this years and years ago, saying that they are employees of the university because they are really asked at the end of the day to prioritize their athletics over their pursuit of their degree, which is true. I think that we can agree that most athletes have that priority of their athletics over what they're pursuing in the classroom. And so it would be great to see a players' union rise up to kind of provide more of a balance for this. Protection of the players, making sure that they have all the health care that they need, making sure that they have all the rest that they need, that they're not overworked. Part of the reason, and I'm not a doctor or anything like that, obviously, but I feel like you see so many more injuries in the NFL compared to college football. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, they are overtraining. They are overworking. They're putting more stress on their body than they ever have before. When you're talking about peewee to high school to college football, they're putting even more stress on it. And with the money getting more and more large at the college level, you're going to see this starting to feel more and more like professional sports. So I think in the interest of the student athlete, I would love to see this happen, but it's going to be hard. If you know anything about unions, is that they're incredibly hard to start and to gain adoption, and there's a lot of risk up front for the people who are creating the union and joining the union. I mean, you see what happened a few years ago with Amazon, with their warehouse workers in certain areas attempting to unionize. These corporations and these institutions put so much pressure on these employees about backlash. There's a lot to lose if you unionize. That's kind of how they push it. And it creates a very long and drawn out process, years and years and years. There's a lot of sacrifice, and people do lose stuff along the way. And with college athletes, that's what's a little bit different than the players union. In professional sports is, of course, like there's more money involved for the most part. People do have a paycheck. However, with college athletes, I mean, you could see universities and institutions making this very difficult where, you could lose your scholarship, you could lose your pursuit of your degree, as well as, the ability to make NIL money. And I think that that's one of the unique challenges that faces college sports, is that you're in a very finite window to capitalize. And will people want to sacrifice their ability to pursue a degree for free and to earn money along the way that they probably haven't seen before in order to form a union? Again, this is a little bit easier in professional sports because it's professional. You need, it's more expected that you were to be a part and join a union, to have these collective bargaining arrangements, so to speak. But this hasn't happened in college sports. There's been a handful of times where this has happened. Do I think that now we're going to see this gain more momentum over the next few years. I think so. But I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to get the vast majority of student athletes to buy in right now. Oh, shoot. My pennant fell down. Well, that's probably a sign that I should sign off. I really want to know your thoughts on this, okay? Because, again, this is just a random kind of monologue or thought. Haven't really done much research into this right now, but would love to hear what your thoughts are, what your concerns are, what you think is going to happen in the future, specifically for college football, and I guess the greater college sports as well. So thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, comment. We're on our way to 1,000 subs, and Go Buffs.